Ugly. That's the word that describes that game for the Pitt Panthers as Pitt loses to Notre Dame 45-3. That's right, 45-3. It was an ugly day at Heinz Field for Pitt as the Irish march up and down and administer complete destruction of Pitt, regardless of what uniforms they had on, regardless of who the quarterback was, regardless of really any of the coaches or anything. It was all Notre Dame all day long. I'm your host here, Mike Asti, and I'm going to be joined by Pittsburgh Sports Now's Mike Vukovcan, who I'm sure is getting ready to unleash here for the Pitt edition of Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live. And Mike, again, it was really, really ugly. Pitt loses 45-3, their fourth loss in a row after starting off 3-0 on the season, and that was kind of historic at that point under Narduzzi. They now lose 4 in a row. Some of those games are to teams that aren't good. Obviously, this is to a team that is good, the number 3 Fighting Irish, but still not in this game at all. Not at all. Now 3-4 on the year. Tons went wrong in this game. But just to start things off, because we certainly can criticize a myriad of different things in this game, and we'll get there. And anyone who wants to chat along, feel free to do so. But where is your head now? Because the bleeding will stop next week. We're not going to have a therapy session or a post-game show next week where Pitt loses because they're not playing, but changes maybe will be made in the meantime. But where is your head after 45-3 complete beatdown, now 3-4 in the year, and they not only lose a rivalry game, but they get embarrassed?
That you just hit the key word right there, Mike. You at the beginning you said ugly and a couple other adjectives that were good, but it's embarrassing. And this reminds me of Johnny Majors Part 2 when he came back and they played Ohio State, and I believe they lost 70-7 or whatever the score was. It was a complete embarrassment for the program, and that's what today was. Pitt was lucky enough for the first 5 or 6 games to play on the ACC network. And today they did so on national TV, which is usually a good thing for your program. Today was, I just can't use the word embarrassing enough because it's, you can't use it enough. From their play, which is number one, the performance, the coaching was atrocious. The way the announcers fairly inaccurately ripped the Pitt uniforms, which now that I got to see them are as bad as Pat Narduzzi's coaching. Mark Whipple's insistence on running his quarterback over to the sideline in between every play because of, I don't know if that's him or Narduzzi with his paranoia, people are going to steal his signs. What are they going to steal, Pat? Your wide receiver screens that you throw every other play, or your run plays that don't work. It was just a complete embarrassment. And my opinion changed on the fact that I don't, at the beginning, a couple weeks ago, I said, it might have been last week or the last time I was on.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
I didn't think Heather Lyke or the university would fire Pat Narduzzi because of being under contract till 2024.
Yeah,
I don't think that's the case anymore. I would be stunned if Pat Narduzzi is coaching this team next week or next year, and I would be even more surprised if he is coaching the team in the near future. I think they have 2 weeks. I think what they saw today, the administration is unacceptable. Somebody has to account for it. And if it will be another embarrassment if come Florida State game in 2 weeks, if there is not somebody removed from this coaching staff.
Big words, but honestly fitting words right now, because as much as nobody was going to get mad if Pitt would lose to Notre Dame. Even coming into the year, even when they were 3-0, we were talking about at that point that maybe Notre Dame could be one of the losses. Notre Dame, Clemson, no one's going to be too mad about losing that game. But to lose it this way and to lose it, and this is part of it. This is why you play an entire season. This is why it was so big of a deal at the time. And we said that then, that when you lose this game, okay, it's a great top 5 team. When you lose this game and get embarrassed, okay, that shouldn't happen at a major program with all this talent, but you can live with it and not fire somebody when they're beating who they should beat. But when you lose this game, get embarrassed, and you lose to Boston College, you lose to NC State, you ruin a 3-0 start to a season, all of that compounds together to the embarrassment and maybe could lead to some heavy changes, could lead to some heavy firings. I know Alan was alluding to maybe some assistant coaches. Certainly Whipple maybe will be let go in this bye week, and that's kind of what Pitt does when they change course if it's in the middle of a bye mid-season and things are going poorly. It seems like Narduzzi could be that guy that finally goes. From what you know about the program, Mike, and you're very, very tapped in, I know that you think it should happen. Do you think we know for next year that's very likely because of the embarrassment, unless this really turns around and Heather Lyke does not want to be embarrassed. But do you think it's likely she does it before Florida State on November 7th? Because obviously that will put the entire staff in dire straits for the rest of the year. And maybe she feels that's not a classy thing to do and she does care about that.
Well, I think Heather Lyke is a bottom line person.
Right. Okay.
If you look at all the athletic programs right now at Pitt, your soccer team, men's soccer team is ranked number 1. Your women's team was ranked. Your volleyball team last year was ranked as high as number 2. They're also in the top 10 again. No matter what the record is, there's a good feeling about Jeff Capel. But we all know any university
football
by their football program
where the money is. That's why that's conference realignment was all about football.
And do you think that if there are fans next year, do you think what are they going to be able to sell this off season going into next season? People don't want to hear the name Pat Narduzzi anymore. He's had 6 years. He didn't do any better than Dave Wannstedt did, except he talked and he got a lot of people pissed off.
Because Wannstedt recruited too. The wins losses weren't there either, but they both can talk about recruiting, but the records haven't been there.
Dave Wannstedt's last 3 years at Pitt, his win totals were 7, 9, and 10.
Yeah, he improved for sure.
That's 26 wins. Pat Narduzzi is not ever going to have a 3-year win total at Pitt of 26 wins. He's just not going to do it. So I don't think this program is ahead. I think, we talk about how the talent level is maybe there. Maybe it isn't there. Maybe it's Narduzzi talking like he likes to do. And maybe it isn't there because I don't see it. The defense for the third week in a row has given up over 30 points. The offensive line is just it looks like a Division II offensive line. Right. And when you look and whose job is that to bring those players in here? That's the coaches. And if it's the coaches, then they're either misevaluating talent, believing that these guys are Power 5 players, or the scheme that they're implementing isn't very good. So what bottom line is, one way or the other, it's the coaches that are responsible for what's going on out there.
And I do think the coaches, regardless of whether there's talent or where the talent ranks, and we could argue about that all day, the coaches have to take it happens in all sports. If you just don't win and you keep getting embarrassed, and even if the talent underachieves, fair or unfair, the coaches have to take the blame. They eventually are going to be the ones punished for it here. Mike Vukovcan of Pittsburgh Sports, now Mike Asti here on the Pitt Postgame show here after 45-3 against Notre Dame here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Mike, I do actually want to bring up some chatters now. We do have some chat activity here. And of course, this therapy session, if nothing else, it's best for business sometimes when games go this way. But to start off, Joe Devine brings up, and he seems like he's kind of alluding to maybe some pushback in terms of, obviously those games, those upsets earlier in the year weren't great, but he's saying no tight end, backup QB. maybe he's kind of alluding to, do you give a little bit of an mulligan for saying it's so much of an embarrassment this week because this was an undermanned Pitt team? I will say before you let loose here that talking about the embarrassment in Narduzzi and the way this program is handled, yes, you can give Yellen a break for level of play in this game because it's only his third career start ever. However, the embarrassment also goes, and Alan talked about it last week, Mike, in replace for you, is just how Narduzzi handles the media, how he handles everything. He flat out lied to us last week in terms of whether Kenny Pickett was going to play. He said on Thursday he feels really good about Kenny Pickett. He's healthy. He loves where he is right now. And the man didn't play. He was out down 10 guys. So that's kind of embarrassing right there. But here's
another one of his and this is why when he says anything in a press conference, nothing is believed is he let his offensive coordinator all week. The comment that came up big last week was when Todd Sibley ran well, and he was asked why didn't he get more carries. He had 4 carries for 25 or 27 yards or something like that. And his comment was, I don't know. I don't call the plays, which is an obvious shot at the offensive coordinator. Sibley didn't play today. You know why? Because he wasn't injured, because he wasn't healthy, which meant that the reason why he didn't get carries in the game so instead of just being
you never want to toss your assistant under the bus, but he does it when it's not even necessary because he's lying about an injury.
Just say he wasn't healthy. He was injured during the game. Right. He couldn't come back and play. So what he does is he lets people rip him, and he lets his assistant coach, his offensive coordinator, get
the fire. Yeah.
And instead of this paranoia thing about injuries that he's had for 6 years, that's just another example. And I wanted to touch one thing about, Mike, you said about the I forgot to get to this when you talked about the assistants and Heather Like. One thing that it could come down to as far as this season is,
because somebody brought up the offensive line coach in a chat as well, wanting him fired.
One thing that could be is how much will Pat Narduzzi go to bat for his assistants?
Would you even want to play for him based on what you just said? I can't trust this man as my boss.
But I'm saying that whoever Heather Like might want to go after, she might say, I want everyone. And if he says, no, I'm not going to do it, it could come down to that. But I think it's going to go deeper than that. I don't think she's going to give him the option. And I don't know if that'll be this year or next year.
It doesn't feel like he would fight for his assistants. It feels like if she said to him, you can stay on the rest of the year if you don't care about who else I fire, it sounds like he would just say, go ahead, I'll keep my job. Like, it doesn't – I mean, you hate to say this about a guy, and I don't know him personally, but it really does come off that you can't trust him. No. Like, when you have a boss, you want to be able to trust them. If things go awry and it's not your fault, you don't want to be thrown under the bus. He just throws everyone under the bus. It doesn't seem like anyone can trust him. He doesn't want to take any responsibility. And when you're the head coach, sometimes you're going to get the credit. When it was 3-0, everyone was praising Narduzzi. They were praising the quarterback. To Kenny Pickett's credit, he always would take blame, even if it wasn't his fault. And he was doing everything when the team would lose. The head coach has to do the same thing as the leader. If it goes well, I'm going to get the credit. But if it goes poorly, I can't just deflect all the blame as if I'm, like Robert Griffin III in his NFL career, just everyone else's fault. I mean, that's almost what it reminds me of. It's just crazy here. Again, Pitt needs to buy out dues. That's again Whipple for being too predictable. Any thoughts there about a change offensive coordinator wise? You think that's going to happen?
Oh, I don't think that's any question. I don't. That's one that I could see happening before next week because it can't continue what's going on. He's, Mark Whipple's like an old gym teacher. He just
throw that quote out there.
Yeah, he's. I think him and Dave Borbley. I don't see those two lasting. Honestly, I don't see the whole staff, and I hate to say it because
till Monday even.
Well, I don't know if they're gonna. I don't know.
Whatever.
That might be too drastic for an in-season if you're going to keep the head coach. But you have other guys on there can call plays in the meantime. You have an assistant offensive line coach. What's he going to do any worse than Borbley's doing? So it's definitely going to be interesting. I think it's a good thing for Pitt, the athletics, the fact that they do have a week off because things could get a little There's not a lot of time if you do want to make a change or demand a change. Like I honestly, I'm going to keep my eye on Twitter here for the rest of the evening, because I wouldn't be surprised in the next 24 hours that, something happens either one way or the other. I see some press releases coming out from
even a statement at least.
Yeah. I see
maybe firings. Yeah.
I see firings. I see people losing their jobs. Here's one thing, and I was thinking about this. What are your thoughts on this, Mike? And I know some of these players might get backlash for this. This season's done, 3-4. It's going nowhere.
Right.
Some of these guys that have NFL futures, and they could be first and second round picks.
Sure.
I tell you what, they might get some backlash from fans for not being team or whatever. I'd have some real I'd be coming up with the hamstring injury.
Mike, this is the year to do it. If you're going to be bad and get out of there, it's this year, because I actually agree with you. If I was going to advise any of these kids, I would tell them to get out of Dodge. And I know that everybody criticizes players for skipping out on bowl games. For example, Will Greer got very criticized for missing bowl games for WVU when he came there as a grad assistant. I didn't criticize him. You're going to preserve yourself for the NFL. Unless it's the national championship or a major bowl game, what's the difference? You're just risking yourself getting hurt for some little trophy. Fans obviously are going to get mad, but especially this year, forget the fact that they might could get some type of postseason because they want to help everybody for COVID. This is a 3-4 team. The season's not going anywhere. I was going to ask you, but it's really up in the air whether they're going to even get a win again the rest of the year. Obviously, there's some winnable games, but nothing really matters the rest of the year. You hit it there. And if I was a legit player that had NFL dreams, I wouldn't want to risk my body for the rest of this season. And I would say, okay, even if I'm not hurt, I'd maybe come up with an injury. But if not, I could say, look, I'm worried about the pandemic. We have we have the tests spiking. We have cases spiking in Allegheny County, for example. Whether it's true or not, I would use that to my advantage to get the hell out of there, because no one's going to fight you now.
No question. If I'm Patrick Jones, Jalen Twyman already opted out. If I'm Patrick Jones, Rashad Weaver, and Paris Ford, I'm out. Those guys are talking about getting,
especially physical positions.
Weaver not so much, maybe in the top couple rounds, but after suffering a knee injury last year, why risk it? Paris Ford could be a top, anywhere from the first to third round. Patrick Jones is going to be a first round pick. I don't know why in the hell he was out on the field in the fourth quarter. You're losing 45-3, and Patrick Jones is still on the field playing in the fourth quarter when Notre Dame has all backups in there. Like, put a backup defensive end in. Him and Weaver are still on the field. I'm like,
maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised, Mike. Obviously, fans normally get upset by this, but just from the chat activity I'm seeing here, Will Thompson, for example, Anthony, they're all saying Paris Ford's a first or second rounder in their eyes. They're all saying they wouldn't have any problem with it. Maybe this season's getting so bad that maybe the fans would finally understand that, go ahead and take care of yourself, because I'm embarrassed, you're embarrassed. Why should we keep on the embarrassment? I mean, it might actually create a situation where the fans might not be that mad because they understand what is the point of this year. I actually saw from our colleague Matt Dyka threw out a tweet before the game that maybe it's best that Pitt gets blown out in some of these games, does not get the random upset of Clemson or whoever else like in years past, because maybe those upsets were masking other issues or were allowing Narduzzi and the staff to hang on because you have that moment. If you get blown out against those good teams and you also lose to bad teams, there's nothing to protect them any further.
Yeah. This is just gonna, and the thing that it's going to come down to, anytime you're going to fire a coach with 4 years left or 3 years left on his contract,
can you do better?
That, and the fact that, do you have the backing from the high money people at the university?
Right.
If they don't want to eat after they had to eat Kevin Stallings, I guess they got a little bit of a break where they had to pay for him. And in light of everything that's going on now, do they have the appetite to say, hey, we're going to eat Pat Narduzzi's $3 to $4 million contract that's through the 2024 season, and then go out there and replace him with another guy that's not going to be cheap.
Yeah, actually, and on that note, that's what chatters are asking about here, because like George is asking here, financially, if Narduzzi is fired, will the buyout hinder the acquisition of another coach or anyone else of any premier note for the future of this program?
Well, that's what I just said. Do they have the money? Do the money and the movers and shakers at Pitt, not only the boosters and everyone else, have they seen enough? Are they calling? Are they texting Heather Light during the game?
It's probably a group chat, yeah.
Hey, we're going to pony up some money. We want him out of here. That a lot of times that's what it comes down to. If they don't want to, if they can't come up with the money, it just might be a shake of the, might be a sweep of the assistant coaches. But I think that would just, put it, what's the saying? You put makeup on a pig or whatever.
Lipstick on a pig. Yeah.
Put lipstick on a pig. That's not going to change anything. You keep Pat Narduzzi here. Nothing is going to change. He's going to bring in his people, and the job that he's done as far as bringing in offensive coordinators over the years, aside from Matt Canada, he's failed. So you're going to trust. You're going to trust him to bring in, and he's the guy in charge. As I said last time,
it has to fall on him.
The guy in charge of the defense. Randy Bates can, people can say Randy Bates means nothing. Pat Narduzzi is in charge of every single scheme, player that goes on the field, play called for Pitt. So as long as he is on that sideline, things are going to stay the same as far as defense goes. So basically, you're going to have Pat Narduzzi's handprint over this team. So,
I think also it stings more defensively, Mike. Mike Vukovcan here at Pittsburgh Sports Now, Mike Asti on the Pitt Postgame show after 45-3. Pitt now 3-4 here for Pittsburgh Sports Now and Pittsburgh Sports Live. I think it stings more defensively, Mike, just because he had the defensive pedigree. He had defensive success, not as a head coach, but at least in the past. And the recruiting, from what at least he was saying, again, now that a lot of that's in question based on what we're seeing on the field, but we certainly saw it the first few weeks of the season. We were talking about it being one of the better defensive units in the country. If we were wrong in terms of the talent here, the national media was wrong too. Maybe they were buying the bill of goods too from DeMar Hamlin and company, because the national media was saying this Pitt defense could be one of the best in the country. You would at least thought that defensively they wouldn't lose games. But no, the defense is also hurting them, allowing 45 here today. The defense with gas, even in games they won, the defense had certain errors, and the defense has not nearly been good to expectations. So I think the defense stings more. Mike, I do have one hypothetical for you, though, and this goes off of what the chatters are saying. This goes off of what you're saying. Obviously, there could be a group chat amongst boosters who want Narduzzi gone no matter how much it takes, and they all have tons of money for these major programs, and no matter how good or bad they are, and they certainly can influence things. But if for some reason the boosters say it's not 1 or 2 years left, it's 4 years, maybe we were wrong on the extension, but it happened. Maybe we just want to wait a little bit longer because that's a lot of money to eat. We don't want to eat it. So the options are, if you have to let Narduzzi go now, then we're going to have to bring in a coach that is likely an assistant that's not going to cost that much money. So they have to bite the bullet that way. Would you want Narduzzi gone if it doesn't provide you somebody that has any, and obviously it's a Pitt program that maybe is down and out now, so I don't know who they can get, but would you want Narduzzi gone no matter what it costs, or would you be okay with keeping Narduzzi a little bit longer and then getting the right guy? Would you want him gone if it means they have to just take anybody they can get because of finances, or do you just want him gone and then move on and we'll worry about that later?
I don't think Heather Light would. I don't think Heather Light would make the move unless she planned on doing what she wanted to do and hiring the right guy. She's just not going to.
You don't want to go through this again.
Yeah, this is her
of coaches, and then now it's Narduzzi.
This will be her This will actually be her most important hiring at Pitt. This will be her hiring. She hired some good, minor sport head coaches. She hired Jeff Coate, which was the second part.
Right.
When you hire a football coach, that's what it's about. So she wouldn't do that unless she can go out there and get the guy. And that's what I mean. I can't guarantee this, but I would imagine that some of these conversations have already taken place over the last couple of weeks. I don't know that they thought it would snowball like this, but I think just like you brought to me, that she might have brought up hypotheticals to people over the last few weeks and say, hey, if this thing really goes south, what type of money do we have? She's not just thinking about this today after a 45-3 loss. In light of what's happened the last 3 weeks, in light of the lack of enthusiasm for the football program, no matter what she tries to do or what the university tries to do, this isn't the first time that Pat Narduzzi's job has entered her mind, or his university. So I would imagine she knows a plan, and if getting rid of him is what is decided, she will go after the best person possible, regardless of the price.
Yeah, and obviously Pitt is still a Power 5 job in a major conference with history and with a lot of money in terms of boosters and former players that really care about the program. The attendance at Heinz Field could certainly be an issue moving forward, depending on what they do there, because even those who are allowed back now, and Narduzzi was fighting for that, you're going to have people with a secondary excuse now of COVID moving forward, and now a team that maybe they don't care to root for moving forward if Narduzzi is still there. So it might just be getting, in order to save the fan base, it might have to be a move that is made because of the disgust of this game and really the disgust of the way this season has unfolded after Narduzzi himself, Mike, was talking about how forget the past. I got my recruits here. We're a veteran team. This is the year. We're going to do it. We're going to be right there. Maybe we'll make another dark horse run to the AFCC championship game. Besides Clemson, who everyone knows is great, we're right there. And then that's just not been the case. I mean, that's just clearly not the case. I can ask you, actually, we can pivot this way based on what you saw from this game. And I talked about with Alan a lot last week. Obviously, Clemson's boat racing teams. They're going to get to tougher games as the season progresses here and very likely are one of the playoff teams. But if number one, if Notre Dame runs through this schedule with the only loss being to Clemson, are they also a playoff team? Because the rest of the schedule is not that great besides North Carolina. And is Notre Dame good enough to beat Clemson? Can they give Clemson a run for their money? What did you see in this game? Or is it just Pitt had the wheels fall off so you can't gauge it?
No, I don't think. Clemson didn't have their running back today. He left, or Travis NTN. He was a first-round pick. If they have him, they will beat Notre Dame handily. As far as your question, whether or not Notre Dame, if they have one loss, I'd have to see who the other.
It's just North Carolina is the only other top 15 team.
Yeah, I'd have to see who the other teams in the
right, of course, yeah,
in the top thing. If it's their only loss and they win convincingly, and some other teams only have one loss, yeah, sure, I'd consider Notre Dame just because of the brand and to get somebody different in. But I'd have to see that. But I don't think if Clemson has a healthy team, I don't know that anyone beats them aside from Ohio State.
Yeah, and Ohio State looking really, really good as Big Ten opens up play against Nebraska. Granted, again, that's Nebraska. Next week, though, will be a big gauge on what happens with Ohio State, and we'll have that coverage over there at Nittany Sports now with Ohio State and Penn State going at it, although I don't know how big of a game that is based on Penn State's performance here today because they weren't impressing anybody either. So we'll see.
One thing I want to bring up, though, Mike, is
sure.
And this is the only thing, and I've been on record of saying this before, I am not a guy, despite his perceived lack of progress with the program over the years. Fans have been calling for Narduzzi for a couple of years now. This isn't new. I'm always one that I don't like coaching changes in college football just because it's not like professional. You can't fire kids on scholarship. You can't. It sets everything back. You lose commitment.
The kid often goes to the school for the coach too.
Yeah. There's more than just firing the coach. Right. There's a lot that comes with it. And depending on what happens here, this could, and what they would decide to do, there's a lot of things that can happen with this that fans might not like. They might like the fact that they're getting rid of Pat Narduzzi if that should happen. We need to keep saying this is not, I think we're talking a little bit as though we know it's going to happen. I believe it's going to happen. But if it should happen, there's a lot of repercussions as far as recruiting. They got a lot of kids in the WPIL, namely the three big kids from the WPIL, Nakai Johnson, Elliott Donald, Dorian Ford, that came to Pitt because they wanted to play for Pat Narduzzi.
Donald's the one too. You don't want to lose him.
You lose Pat Narduzzi, there's no guarantee that those kids stick. And then your recruiting class this year becomes mud, and that just sets you a year. So there's things that happen. Do the fans want to get rid of him? Yes. Do they want to have? And the other thing that you can see happen with the rule that's going to come in this year with one-time transfers.
Yeah, because of COVID. Yeah.
They're going to put blanket for the NCAA. You have one-time transfer during your career, and you play immediately.
Yeah.
If that happens, I could see a bunch of kids getting out of Dodge here and leaving here. So there's a lot of stuff that can happen when you decide to make that move to replace coaches. So it's not.
I don't know if fans fully understand that too, because you also have to think of it this way, Mike, too. This would have been a great time for Pitt to be good because it's open in the ACC besides Clemson, really, and even overall in college football with Oklahoma and some others kind of taking a dip. But obviously that's not the case for Pitt. This is also a really, really bad time, Mike, for Pitt to be really, really bad and potentially be firing a coach, because you mentioned recruiting, and that's what you guys cover so well at Pittsburgh Sports now. Locally, because of conference realignment, Penn State, Ohio State, WVU, and Pitt, they're still recruiting the WPIL regionally. But now that's splitting in between three major conferences. And as long as Franklin stays, Ohio State obviously is going to keep things going as a national powerhouse. And WVU now is in the second year of Neil Brown, and they're looking like they're turning the corner. Granted, maybe not so much today, but they're not going to be firing a coach. So that would leave Pitt as the only regional recruiting team, at least the closest regional team, who's recruiting the WPIL, and some do nationally too, that does not have continuity, that the coach they talked to yesterday is not going to be the coach they're going to talk to tomorrow. And some of those kids, and we've seen that happen before, they may have to say to themselves, I wanted to go to Pitt. That's my number one. But if the coach is gone, this team isn't winning, I'll go down there to Morgantown, 70 miles away, where my family can still see me play and play major college football, or I'll go to Happy Valley, or I'll go somewhere else. Those things have happened to Pitt before during all this influx and can easily happen again with a head coach question mark moving forward. I don't think Elliott Donald's going to go to WVU, but you know what I'm saying. That could very, very much happen, and that could really make the program really take a dip for years to come and then make it not attractive to another coach. And then you're maybe 8 years away again, depending on how this is all handled.
Yeah, it's that. And that's the reason why I've always been leery, because I've always had the question of what do the university actually, what's the bar? What's the ceiling they think Pitt can get to? Do they think that they're a team that can be an LSU? If that's the case, they're very far away. If they're a team that can be nine wins every year, 8-9 wins, they're not that far away. Despite what we've seen this year, they're not that far away.
We thought they could do it this year. Many thought they could do it this year.
It all depends what the goal is, but the biggest thing that they have is lack of interest, and the people in the stands has to be a concern for the university. So it's a big thing. It goes beyond just the head coach and wins and losses. It's what they're seeing, momentum.
Recruits care about that too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no question. If they see, that's what I mean. It's a very complicated issue. It's not just wins and losses and stuff like that. And I know fans just think it's that, but it's not. But he has had 6 years. This is 6 years. It's not like we're talking about this in year 3. Everyone he's losing with right now are his players. These are nobody else's players. So everyone you brought in here,
some of them are veteran players too.
Yeah, or the guys not getting it or not getting it done. So that's on the head coach.
Yeah, let's see if we have anything else here in the chat here. Mike Vukovcan, Mike Asti, as we wrap things up here for the Pitt postgame show. 45-3 beatdown, 3-4 in the year, and we've been talking a lot about whether Narduzzi's job is safe, what kind of hot seat he is on. Obviously, that's what Pitt fans are going to be talking about for now 2 weeks, as Narduzzi's going to have to let that simmer. So if he is the coach, he's going to be really, really mad because there's going to be a lot of negative criticism for 2 weeks, and we know he does not like that. Pitt will never be the Pitt of the past. Narduzzi seemed to have support of his players with this. Okay, this is a question, I guess, Mike, and I'm not going to ask it this way, but just this I'll ask it in some way, because the chatters here talking about Narduzzi seemed to have support of his players with his handling of Black Lives Matter and all of that. But I just want to ask you, just in general, without going down the weeds there, do you feel like Narduzzi has the support of the players? I'll just simply ask that.
I think he has some. From what I hear, he's a guy that he's very difficult to get along with as far as his coaching staff goes. And I think with the players,
I don't wonder why.
Yeah, I think with by the way, Penn State just lost to Indiana 36-35.
I was going to say, I saw 35. They were up by a touchdown last time I checked.
Indiana just went for 2 after
God.
One. I'm just going. I got an alert on my phone. So
okay. My fiance is a Penn State alum, so I feel bad for her. But that also ruins the big game next week. Right. That really crushes Penn State, Ohio State.
Yeah, the James Franklin is going to get torched for a decision. He let a guy. He went for a touchdown instead of just falling on his knee.
Oh Lord, help us.
Kneel. But that's a different thing. As far as support goes, I think the longer players are around him, I think his abrasiveness and his rah-rah wears off. And I think the young players like him when they get there by year 3. I don't know that their support for him, definitely by their senior year. I don't know that it was there. That's what I hear, that by his senior year, junior year, it's gone. He wears thin on people as far as his
because he's a salesman, and they eventually learn that the sales pitch didn't come to fruition.
Exactly.
He's a great salesman. That is also part of it, though, in college football. You have to, if you're at a premier program like Nick Saban, you can sit there and flash the rings and that's it. But when you're at Pitt, Dave Wannstedt talked about this with you repeatedly on some shows he put up on PSL in recent years since we started that channel, that yeah, you can flash the ring in the resume that he's done, but you do need to offer a sales pitch when you're at a Pitt or even a West Virginia and those schools. You got to offer a sales pitch, because they could easily say, if you don't want me, if you're not winning, I can go down there. So Narduzzi offered the sales pitch. It was successful for some major recruits, certainly some major local recruits. He actually did improve on that a little bit, but you eventually then got to coach him up on the field, and you got to have success once you have that talent there, especially as veterans. And again, I don't think anyone would be too mad if this team was entering this game undefeated or even with one loss, and then you get boat raced by Notre Dame, even though that's still not good. But that North Carolina State, that Boston College law, I don't think he understands when you lose to teams that are not quote unquote bowl eligible in the midst of a year, it hurts worse than even these games when you're losing to a top 5 team the way you did, but they weren't even in this game. And then, yeah, you brought up, we didn't even get to, but you brought up here as we're kind of rounding things out. I don't get the decision to not wear a traditional line of Pitt uniforms on a national TV game against an historic rivalry program. You can throw these alternates up against any other team, but that doesn't feel like a good decision either. I mean, that was another decision that was bungled at the start of this game. They didn't look the part. You should be showing off the Pitt tradition that is there, even though it doesn't exist on the field. And they didn't even do that.
No, and the other thing that he got ripped for, I ripped him for it, and it's bad when Sean McDonough and those guys, his defeatist attitude going right into the half. They were, was it 21 to, whatever the score, 21-3, whatever the score was, they get the ball with 3 timeouts, 21-3. They get the ball at their own 40-yard line with minute 45, I believe, minute 50 left in the half, and 99.9% of teams in the country will try to, you got 3 timeouts, you're only at your 40, you got a kicker that can kick it from 50 yards.
We saw that.
Yeah. and you kneel on the ball, and basically you run the ball and you play scared, and then they block the punt and they take it into the halftime with a 28-3. He got ripped for that more than anything, aside from the final score. That is a bad look for him, and I'm real curious to see how he explained that in his post-game press conference, because even parents of players were tweeting about it.
And that leads to more of what you're saying, by regardless of it killing recruiting and it might hurt you for 10 years, when you have parents of players, when you have boosters who are publicly making comments against the coach, they might just eventually say, we need to get rid of this guy almost to make us, because really when you think about it, Mike, if you keep a guy along that isn't winning, that is kind of embarrassing you with just pure lies and press conferences, you talk about listening to the Zoom, I'd love to, but you take it with a grain of salt. He's gonna deflect, He's gonna make something up, he's not gonna give you a real answer. They might eventually say, this is Pitt, there is history here. If we don't fire this guy, it's an embarrassment for us as well. I mean, you might have to just bite the bullet and fire him to not then be embarrassed as well. I don't get that too. Yeah, it didn't seem like the white flag. He had the similar questionable call against Penn State, obviously last year, that some were clamoring over. I guess one thing what Chatter brought up that I will ask you here, and this is a legit question, Greg asked, what happened with Yellen and Whipple on the sideline? Do you think Whipple's lost the locker room, and what went on there in your eyes?
I can't answer that because I don't know what.
Right.
Obviously, we saw the yelling. He wasn't happy about, I'm sure.
It's weird to see for an inexperienced quarterback to go out of coaching.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think at that point everyone was frustrated, and I'm sure. Whipple saw something that maybe Yellen should have read as far as where he should have gone instead of throwing, and that was his way of communicating. I don't think. I think more is going to be made of that just because you see coaches yelling, but I think that's very minor. I think by that point. Right. The horse is different. Yeah. What's the difference? At that point, it really doesn't matter. But okay. They have problems with that because I'm hearing that I'd be shocked. Also, Pat Narduzzi.
Yeah. Why should Pickett play the rest of the year?
No, I've been hearing that Pickett's injury is very serious, and he continues to say that he expects him to come back. I don't believe that either. I think that's just another one of his,
I will say too, Mike,
at a press conference. Yeah, I think
it's just a lie.
Just says that to the so the other coach, has to prepare for 2 quarters. Who cares at this point, Pat?
Yeah, really. I mean, that was a little crazy. And then to say that they're very healthy with 10 guys missing time. I know if you watched last week's postgame show, Allen let loose on that. He kind of unleashed because you feel like you just purely lied to right in front of your face. And coaches are going to talk with some hyperbole, and they're going to have some coach speak, and they're going to lie a little bit every now and then at all levels. But just a bold-faced lie is a little ridiculous at this point. It's another embarrassment for the program. And I think that the sad thing would be, Mike, and we talked about this in earlier post-game shows, if Kenny Pickett's injury is so serious that it costs him his football future in any way, that's a real damn shame. And that's also part on Narduzzi as the leader of the program, because Kenny Pickett, who's clearly progressed in years to come, he's been better as these years go by. He's become a leader of this team. He has been asked, and certainly this year, was asked to do unreasonable levels of play. I mean, they're asking him to do almost as much as Lawrence out there with Clemson in terms of the leading rusher as well as the leading thrower, and throwing 50 times a game and running all over the place with an offensive line that's porous. Hopefully they basically didn't kill his career, but that very much could be the possibility.
It's just bad, Mike. Hopefully, and here's it's not the funny thing for the coaches. During the week off, what do the coaches normally do when they're off for a week? They go out and recruit. Good luck going out there recruiting kids this week, coming off of 4 straight losses. First-time program has lost 4 straight games since 2007. So good luck with that. I think we'll see if it's an active news week for Pitt. I'd be surprised if it's not. And like I said, stay with Pittsburgh Sports now. Allen's over at the I'm trying to read some of his Narduzzi's talking about he expects Pickett to come back before the end of the season. Now he
Lord,
says,
here we go again.
yeah, before he said Florida State, he thought he would be back. Now he said that might be a stretch.
I got to be honest. What's the difference? If you're Kenny Pickett's parents, why would you, even if he's not seriously hurt, why bring him back for these games for no reason?
Yeah. If your ankle isn't healthy and you think you have a chance
running around like,
yeah, with this offensive line, no way in hell I would be going out there with this offensive line.
No, I think,
if I don't have 100% mobility.
No, especially the mobility part with how he's had to run 40 yards plus a game to even be in some of those games with 10 plus carries. You can't do that with an ankle injury. Last thing for you, I guess, and this might be part of how Pitt fans maybe are unreasonable with what they expect out of the program, and certainly the case right now when you mentioned do you want to be LSU or do you just want to be an 8-9 win team that can be respectable as a major conference team. Jacob says, next head coach hire should not be a coordinator. Go for a proven head coach with an innovative offense. And while that would be fantastic, like say, what Ole Miss did, bringing in Lane Kiffin or somebody like that with an innovative offense. And I don't know, Pitt can't do that right now. This is a program that is down and out, that is looking to rebuild. Yes, there's history there, and I'm not going to ask you any thoughts on who they hired because we'll do that on other shows and we'll certainly have that covered.
I already have a name that I would go out.
Okay, if you already have a name.
No, I already have a name. I've always been a fan. I've been a fan of his. I think he would be able to recruit around here. I think he has he's a great offensive coordinator, and he's from Western Pennsylvania. Not that I think that shouldn't have zero factor in it, but I would go out and hire. I know Pitt fans might, throw a hissy fit over this, but I'd go hire Joe Moorhead in a second. Former offensive coordinator at Penn State. He's the current offensive coordinator with Oregon. He had 1 year or 2 years at Mississippi State. That's an impossible job to coach down, and Mike Leach will find that out down in the he knows what offenses is about. He got Penn State from the Stone Ages into a 2020 offense. He'll do the same thing at Oregon. I would hire him. In a heartbeat if he would be interested in coming back home. He's from Penn. Yeah,
that's a good hire because you're not going to, unlike what Jacob's saying, you're not going to get a proven head coach that done it at a major program right now. It's okay to hire a coordinator that you think can build the future of the program. You have to also understand a little bit where you are right now as a program. And if you are going to hire a head coach with proven head coach experience, it probably will be a guy at a smaller school like you had to do to go get Neil Brown at Troy. You could get a head coach from Troy. And I think that was a great hire for West Virginia, but it's either that or a coordinator. You're not going to pluck a major program's head coach. Nor West Virginia is not going to do that either. These programs are not going to do that when you're rebuilding and you're not winning. So that's a good name. The funny other name that just randomly pops in my head, and this would be hilarious to get Narduzzi's take on if this would happen in some other sidebar interview after his career is over, is do you want to go call Matt Canada, try to get him off the Steelers and say we'll give you a head coach job? You did it offensively once. That would be.
I would have no problem with that because
Narduzzi would be real pissed secretly.
They need to get a guy that is young and knows about offense. This defensive stuff, they need to be able to put points on the scoreboard. They haven't been able to do that for years. Defense. The game of college football is all about scoring points now. The rules dictate that. Everything is leaning toward they want you to score, and Pitt just can't score because of their vanilla offensive coordinator and the system and the restrictions that the head coach puts on him. So I would be okay with that too. I would totally be okay with Matt Canada as well.
And that'd be the funniest. That would be the funniest out of all the options. I think I almost kind of like that for how Narduzzi would handle it. Yeah, and as much as he'd be leaving the NFL, he already lives in Pittsburgh, wouldn't have to look for a new house, and it would be a head coach job at a major program instead of being an assistant with the Steelers. I mean, with the Steelers, he's behind multiple men in terms of who his boss is. So he might not mind having a program in which he actually can run and have it be at a program that he's already familiar with. And he might not even mind needling Narduzzi to replace him too and try to turn it around. Because it seems like there's some talent there with Addison and company, but they're not able to put points on the board. Any last words, Mike, as we close things?
No, that's it. I'm gonna get on Twitter here, and I'm gonna fire up a column here that I'm sure, after listening to me here for the last 20 minutes or so, you probably have an idea of what the column's going to be like. And I know the people over at Pitt aren't going to like to read it, but that's not my problem.
No, and honestly, you got to be honest. If you were doing anything else, I think it'd be disingenuous to the fans and subscribers. We would just be lying the same way that maybe we were lied to. And I don't even think they would blame you. And we'll see whether or not they would blame you based on some moves this coming week and maybe some moves that'll show in that support here moving forward. For Mike Vukovcan and Pittsburgh Sports Now, Pitt once again embarrassed. It was ugly, 45-3. They lose to Notre Dame, now 3-4 in the year, and everything's in question about the future of this program, including the jobs of the people that are currently running this program. I'm Mike Asti here, and stick with me, though. I'll be with Anna over there, Anna Tarola, who is the sports director at WOWK in Charleston, West Virginia, to recap the Mountaineers game against Texas Tech. So we'll see what happens there as that one kind of closes in a close one as well. Mike, thanks.
Maybe West Virginia could be the only winners today. Penn State loses, Pitt loses. I wonder actually which fan base is more pissed off. Pitt fans.
You're Penn State, I would think you're really, really mad because they have a top 10 team.
That, especially knowing that Ohio State's coming up next, that could be a nail in the season already.
Yeah, and WVU is in a barn burner tied right now in the third. So who the hell knows what's going on right now? But I'm going to have some dinner and then recap that one.
All right, Mike.